I am one of the most honest people that you'll ever meet. So honest that in my college-bound interview as a high school sophomore, I told Marisha and Laura that I wasn't going to college. When asked what I wanted to be when I graduated, I said, a therapist. I had often lent an ear to my friends and family who felt that their world was crashing for simpler things like relationship struggles. Genuinely, I thought I was so good at counseling that I didn't even need college. So you can imagine, when I found out for the first time in this interview, how I felt when I was told that I not only had to go to college, but I had to get a master's degree. That summer, I tried to skip out on College Bound at every turn. My playbook included things like, my mom's too scared for me to take public transportation. I don't know how I'm going to get there. Or, I have a job and I can't lose out on the work funds. I need the money. Always prepared, College Bound was not only ready to reimburse me for lost work funds, but they were ready to teach me the public transportation system so my mom felt more comfortable. Since I ran out of lies, I gave up and I attended CB Summer Intensive at St. Louis University, where I had made a lot of lifelong friends. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt at home. I never said no to College Bound again.
In high school, one would classify me as an overachiever. I graduated most likely to succeed and was class president. I even gave the commencement address. I was heavily involved in activities, programs, and college was simply the next step in the process. I knew what I wanted. I just didn't know how to get there. The journey to college discovery began then, with Lisa and Debbie handing out flyers in the halls of my high school. This was 2008, also known and referred to as the guinea pig era. What I knew was my drive to succeed, and I trusted two women who also shared that same drive. They promised to get me where I wanted to go. Now, the first year was filled with mind-blowing experiences. I traveled more with College Bound in those years than ever before. College Bound put me on a plane by myself to go to Barnard College in New York City. We would also visit other universities, college fairs, and my love for community service and engagement began. It was the exposure that was key. My lens of the world began to expand.
I told you a moment ago that I was one of the most honest people that you'll ever meet, so I'll let you in on something now. My parents were drug dealers for as long as I can remember. Since our formative years, my brother and sister have been addicted to drugs. When my sister would run into trouble on the streets, that would often get traced back to our home. In the middle of the night, I would awake to strangers trying to break into my window, sneak into my house without my parents' permission, and my sister would come home at 2 or 3 in the morning being loud when I had school at 6. And that all changed when I went to college and had my own space for the first time. Excited, scared, and ambitious, I showed up to Lawrence University ready to learn. Where my classmates were receiving A's and B's on their first papers, I received a C-. I worked hard, I made slight adjustments, and I ended up with all B's in my first trimester. I grew too confident, so I began studying Tom Brady's throwing patterns in Madden 08 more than I was studying for my exams. Simultaneously, my family was calling me every day and my parents were asking me to be their judge and jury to figure out who was most guilty in their arguments. Stressed to the max, I got a D in social psychology in my second trimester. And in my third trimester, I dropped to a 1.9 GPA and was put on academic probation. One more bad semester would earn me dismissal from college. I had suffered from the first-generation student's curse. I worried about my parents splitting and any ripple effects of homelessness. College required every bit of the same strength that I used to navigate my personal barriers, and I could no longer do both. My social support advisor, Chuck, identified that I was energetically split in two different directions. Meanwhile, my academic advisor asked me if I was even cut out for psychology anymore. I had to make some really hard decisions that most 18-year-olds should never have to make. I accepted that my parents were two adults who needed to figure things out for themselves. So I stopped picking up their phone calls, and I moved in with my then girlfriend's family, who's now my wife. Thank you. And worst of all, maybe even best of all, I sold all of those video games. Finally, I was free to focus on academics. I read the syllabus and planned my full semesters in advance. I integrated writing and content tutoring into my everyday schedule. And I started studying weeks instead of days before the exams. And before I knew it, I earned all A's and B's for the rest of my college career.
My senior year, I applied to at least 30 colleges and universities, and I gained acceptances to schools like Stanford, Brown, Barnard, and Spelman. College Bound said, "That's great, but the journey doesn't end at being accepted. We have to figure out your funding." Can you imagine my confusion? They began to talk to me about award letters and comparing the various offers. I had a lot to consider, seeing as though I applied to so many schools. Because College Bound established a personal relationship with my family, they were aware of my unstable living situation. I attended 6 different schools and bounced from house to house, from family member to family member, and from one poverty level to the next. I moved out of my home in August of my senior year. My mom had unresolved mental health issues. This resulted in mental, emotional, verbal, and physical abuse. College Bound went above and beyond the call of duty. Over the summers, I spent the majority of my time in the CB office, where the staff created a safe haven of support, which included good, steady meals. Due to my living situation, College Bound knew it was best for me to be considered an independent student. A school I had only recently discovered, Agnes Scott College in Atlanta, offered the best fit as an independent student. Now, to many people, college gave them the opportunity to earn a degree, to make lasting impressions and connections. But to me, college gave me a bed and 3 meals a day. I distinctly remember my first night in the residence hall. It was the first time I had slept in an actual bed in over a year. That was monumental. College Bound gave me that. My time at Agnes Scott was amazing. I never thought I would go to an all-women's school. Academically, I was challenged with rigorous courses, and I was pushed in ways I didn't imagine. Now, senior year came, and I wanted to position myself for the next journey. I needed to figure out what my next move would be. I applied and was accepted into AmeriCorps, Teach for America, Fulbright, a few graduate schools, and the Peace Corps.
I graduated in 2015 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology and worked on staff at College Bound for 7 years in multiple roles where I worked with students like me. Some students had significant personal barriers to overcome. Some overextended themselves extracurricularly. And some just played way too many video games. But I began to figure out which one of my conversations worked the most. If mentors could show a high level of care and empathy, if they could be genuinely honest when giving feedback to students, and then help the student build an action plan with them and not for them, from there, students must make the hard decisions and follow through. Without their buy-in, it all crumbles. Well, I bought in. And I am now a St. Louis University admission counselor, where I can pull from my own and my previous students' experiences in my everyday work. I worked with 65 students at College Bound a year, and I now work with 500 undergraduate students a year, all from first generation and economically disadvantaged backgrounds. My name is Russell Brannen, and my hope for higher education is that it becomes a values and a business-based decision for students. With first-generation staff in positions of influence, universities can dream big in the resources that they would provide to support students without privilege. That way, they can stop dreaming about going to college and start planning for their futures. I will be in this fight for a very long time. And I hope that we can continue to have wonderful folks like you there with me too.
I joined the United States Peace Corps and loved my time in the Philippines. Upon returning, I attended graduate school, where I received my master's in education and my doctorate in higher education administration. My name is Dr. Nanette Ashford. I am the Director of Graduate Admissions in the School of Arts and Sciences at Washington University in St. Louis. I am also a foundational leader for the school's strategic plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion. My goal in higher ed is to be what I needed others to be for me during my college experience. What I do daily includes eradicating barriers, providing and expanding access and opportunities for affordability, and advocating for historically excluded populations. My purpose in this world is to be sure younger generations see success in their future, and people like me, first generation, low income, and from trauma-stricken homes are allowed that opportunity. Thank you.